Another question here for I'm a female filmmaker, ask me anything. This one comes from Kaila. I'm pretty sure that's how you say your name, Kaila. Kaila at the event in Acton wrote down a bunch of questions, so I'm going to try to get through them all. She says, how did you get into directing? I've always been an artist and a tomboy. I don't know if that's directly relevant, but I think that filmmaking is a little bit athletic in a sense, so that kind of fit. I thought that I wanted to follow in my dad's footsteps and become a graphic designer, but I wasn't super passionate about that. And one day I was watching Pirates of the Caribbean, although Kaila, you were at the event, so you probably heard this story a little bit, but for other people, I was watching Pirates of the Caribbean for, let's say, probably the 25th time, and I had rented or bought the DVD and was watching the DVD extras over and over and over again. And I don't remember if at this point I had made my first short film or I did that after this for my art class when I got a camera for my 16th birthday. But when I was watching these DVD extras for Pirates, my dad walked through the room and said, why don't you make movies? Or why don't you do this? Or something like that. And I think I said okay. And I think that he walked out of the room and we started switching the college search from graphic design to filmmaking. And I took filmmaking classes, etc. And I was 16 years old. And my dream has not changed. I still want to be a director. I am a director. Okay. Question 2. Where did you get the idea of the plot of this movie from? Kaila is talking about Sweet Desert Palm, my feature film in development, a narrative feature about 2 girls who play psychological mind games in the desert. There's a concept trailer you should watch if you haven't seen it yet. Where did I get the idea from? There aren't a lot of movies about female relationships gone wrong. I think that there is some really deep, very interesting stuff going on with females and their brains and then between each other. So I sort of discovered that that's what I wanted to write about along the way, but it started out as a short film about a girl who lives in the desert, a world I am totally, or was totally unfamiliar with until I drove across the country from Boston to California. I fell in love with the desert and I would go out there whenever I could, and I imagined what if a girl like me sort of grew up out there, but she ended up alone without her father, something that's very important to me, family, and had this sort of terrible coming-of-age story where she ends up getting herself into a lot of trouble because she's harboring all this grief. And the second girl in the story is the physical manifestation of what's going on inside of her. She's a real girl, but she sort of represents the more troubled side of what this first girl could become. It's a psychological thriller. Question 3 of 4. Have you acted in a play or a musical, and is this the first movie you've written? That's really 5 questions, because that's 2 questions in one. I have acted when I was little. I mean, in elementary school, I tried out for some stuff, and I ended up being like, the people in the back that sing and stuff like that. Same thing in 7th grade. I did choir for a while, and stopped that. I'm not big on performing personally. I'm much more behind the scenes, sort of like to write and then perfect it and then put it out into the world. And then in college, we acted for each other. Us film students acted for each other because we didn't have too many pools of a big pool of actors yet, or we didn't trust ourselves with actors yet because we thought we didn't know what we were doing. So I acted a little bit. You said, and is this the first movie you've written? It's the first full feature script I've written. I've written a ton of short films, smaller things like that, and I've started about 3 other features that I didn't end up finishing because I didn't want to direct them, and at the time that's what I knew I wanted to do. So Sweet Desert Prom is the first full feature script I've finished. Question 4. What advice would you give to a 10-year-old girl, I'm guessing this is you, a 10-year-old girl who loves acting and wants to write/direct a play, musical, or movie? I would say do it and trust yourself. I did an interview the other day and somebody asked me, what advice would you give to people who are writers who are maybe trying to go over into the directing role? And the only thing I could say was trust yourself, because there's so many ways to get to the same place at this point. I'm going the independent route, there's the studio route. If you want to do theater, there's Broadway, there's other more independent theater, and I don't know too much about the theater and musical world, but writing and directing is writing and directing, and acting I do know less about, but I do have friends who act and write and direct themselves in their own work. Sometimes they just write and direct other people, but they're constantly learning from all of that. And if you feel drawn to a few of those processes, I would say go for it and explore them. For me, it was writing, directing, and editing. So I learned a lot about where a movie has to end up from editing, which helps me in my directing and my writing, because I know what's possible and I know what you can pull out of something you didn't think you had anything, or I know what camera angles you need to get, or that a certain kind of shot is going to give us this sort of emotion versus, close up versus a wide shot, a low angle, a high angle, whatever it is. And I would say really figure out why you want to do all those things. Just start writing something, start making something, and each time you do that, you're going to get better. So whether it's putting a play on for your friends and family or your neighborhood or your school, or it's getting a cheap video camera and just making a movie and experimenting. Just do it. And if you need help with other parts, you are confused about the camera, ask somebody who's better than you at that. That's totally fine, and then you'll learn. So yeah, I guess the advice is trust yourself, but just start doing it. Alright? I hope that helps.